By way of introducing this shadow presentation tonight, we'd like to offer you this montage of sound and visuals that help you understand in a deeper way the presence and power of the shadow in our world. Check it out. We're showing you clips from current news and from decades ago. See which ones you remember. See which ones have the most powerful effect on you right now. As we launch into what the shadow looks like in our world. One of the most fiery and controversial issues in the United States today, and perhaps in the world, is sexual abuse, sexual harassment, and how it manifests in terms of our individual and collective shadow. In 1970, I graduated from Michigan State University, and many times as a student, I sang the Michigan State alma mater, which begins with MSU, we love thy shadows.
Dr. Larry Nassar was the head doctor for USA Gymnastics and a well-respected on-campus doctor at Michigan State University when a student went to school officials with a troubling story.
I felt so incredibly violated.
The incident took place during an appointment with Dr. Nassar for Amanda's hip and back pain.
It was when he started to actually insert his fingers. That's when I pushed him off of me. I had told him, to stop.
Did he have gloves on?
No.
Did he tell you he was about to do that?
No.
She immediately reported the incident to officials. The university suspended Nassar and conducted an investigation. NBC News obtained the report. The conclusion? We cannot find the conduct was of a sexual nature. The procedure was medically appropriate. Gymnast Lindsay Lemke was Dr. Nassar's patient for 3 years when she was a teenager. She now believes what Nassar called treatment back then was actually sexual assault over hundreds of sessions.
Around 500 or more altogether.
Now an MSU gymnast, she says the school seemed to be more concerned about keeping a lid on the allegations against Dr. Nassar than offering her team support.
I knew it was wrong, and I came forward. I stood up for myself, and I was silenced.
Dr. Nassar's lawyers have said his techniques were medically accepted and appropriate, and called the allegations against him patently false and untrue. More than 80 women have already come forward alleging assault, and the Michigan Attorney General says they keep getting calls.
A remarkable sentencing hearing in Michigan this week has been described as heartbreaking, angry, and cathartic. More than 100 girls and women have been confronting the man who abused them sexually for years, and about how those experiences changed their lives. One by one, they stepped forward in a Lansing, Michigan courtroom to face their abuser.
You manipulated me into thinking you were the good guy and helping me while sexually abusing me over and over and over for your own twisted sexual pleasure.
For 3 days, former sports doctor Larry Nassar has listened to wrenching testimony by dozens of his victims.
I'm here today to tell you face to face that your days of manipulation are over. We have a voice now. We have the power now.
The women share not only similar stories of abuse, but lasting psychological scars.
I have been suffering from PTSD for the last 20 years. I am so incredibly angry. Angry that this happened to me, enraged that it was allowed to happen to me, furious that I've been dealing with this trauma for over 20 years and I didn't even realize it.
One victim described the shock of hearing the allegations and recognizing her own experience.
He took that trust and used it to molest not only myself, but over 140 young girls. Is something I still can't comprehend. I still can't think about without crying. We were just kids. We were just kids.
Michigan State had investigated a federal Title IX complaint against Nassar in 2014, but brought no charges and allowed him to keep working.
And now we have chosen a short clip from a recent random edition of CBS Evening News. Pay attention to the staggering amount of shadow that is obvious.
President Trump tweeted that Dems just want illegal immigrants to pour into our nation unchecked, a reference to Democrats' demand that protections for DACA recipients, undocumented immigrants who entered the U.S. as children, be included in any funding deal.
We're going to demand that they reopen the government.
Vice President Mike Pence blasted Democrats during a visit to U.S. troops nearby the Syrian border.
We're not going to reopen negotiations on illegal immigration until they reopen the government and give you, our soldiers, and your families the benefits and wages you've earned.
He said U.S. troops are paying the price for the shutdown since 1.3 million military men and women will not receive paychecks until a new funding bill is passed. The White House is trying to...
What we notice in the statement by Mike Pence is incredible polarization and distortion. Polarization, which continues the great divisions between people and institutions in our culture. We see him polarizing the United States military and immigrants, when in fact, the way that many immigrants have become citizens and have become integrated into American culture is through the military. This is an artificial polarization, and yet, politically, it works.
Elaine?
Margaret Brennan. Margaret, thank you. The National Women's March held its main event today in Las Vegas with the goal of getting women to march to the polls in November's midterm elections.
Los Angeles estimates 600,000 men and women in attendance, with Me Too and Time's Up movements taking center stage.
When I raise my hand, I am aware of all the women who are still in silence.
There were tense moments at a march in Portland, but most focused on President Trump's time in office.
I object to the issues and the changes that he's made, but mostly I object to the way he talks about people. It hurts me.
Pennsylvania Republican Patrick Meehan was removed from the House Ethics Committee this weekend over allegations of misconduct. The New York Times reports Meehan used thousands of dollars in taxpayer money to settle a complaint by a former aide. The woman reportedly claims Meehan became hostile after she rejected his romantic advances. Meehan has denied the allegations. The Ethics Committee is investigating. Missouri Governor Eric Greitens has kept a low profile since the CBS affiliate in St. Louis earlier this month reported that he had an extramarital affair. Greitens spoke to reporters this weekend. Meg Oliver has details.
There was no violence.
In his first interview since admitting to an extramarital affair, Missouri Governor Eric Greitens denied allegations of blackmail.
There was no threat of blackmail. There was no threat of a photograph in blackmail. Those things are absolutely false.
Greitens admits he had an affair with his hairdresser before he became governor in 2017. But he says it was consensual.
There was no hush money. There was no violence.
The news broke last week. Audio recordings obtained by CBS affiliate KMOV, which has not been independently verified by CBS News, appear to show an unnamed woman, the governor's alleged mistress, admitting to the affair to her then-husband.
I'm downstairs. I want to show you how to do a proper pull-up. And I knew that he was being sexual, and I still let him. Use some sort of tape, I don't know what it was, and taped my hands to these flames. and then put a blindfold on me.
She went on to describe the alleged blackmail.
And he stepped back and I saw a flash through the blindfold. He said, "You're never going to mention my name, otherwise his pictures will be everywhere."
So help me. At 43, Greitens is the second youngest governor in the country. The Democrat turned Republican proudly painted himself as a family man during his campaign.
I'm a Navy SEAL, I'm a businessman, I am a native Missourian, but most importantly, I am a very proud husband and father.
Once considered a rising star in the Republican Party, the governor now faces an investigation by the St. Louis prosecutor and mounting pressure to resign. Elaine.
Now let's go back in time for some very poignant examples of shadow.
I want to say something else. There's been a lot of talk in the newspapers and on TV about a program that I put in motion to detain and question terrorists and extremists. I have put this program in place for a reason, and that is to better protect the American people. And when we find somebody who may have information regarding a potential attack on America, you bet we're going to detain them. And you bet we're going to question them. Because the American people expect us to find out information, actionable intelligence, so we can help them, help protect them. That's our job. Secondly, this government does not torture people. You know, we stick to U.S. law and our international obligations.
Even before I came into office, I was very clear that in the immediate aftermath of 9/11, we did some things that were wrong. We did a whole lot of things that were right, but we tortured some folks.
Now let's go further back in time, where we see Richard Nixon swearing that he's going to end the Vietnam War. And only a couple of years later, we find that, in fact, he and Henry Kissinger had escalated it.
Never has so much military, economic, and diplomatic power been used so ineffectively as in Vietnam. If after all of this time and all of this sacrifice and all of this support, there is still no end in sight, then I say the time has come for the American people to turn to new leadership, not tied to the policies and mistakes of the past. I pledge to you, we shall have an honorable end to the war in Vietnam.
This time, vote like your whole world depended on it.
At 7:30 a.m. on April the 17th, 1975, the war in Cambodia was over. It was a unique war, for no country has ever experienced such concentrated bombing. On this, perhaps the most gentle and graceful land in all of Asia, President Nixon and Mr. Kissinger unleashed 100,000 tons of bombs, the equivalent of 5 Hiroshimas. The bombing was their personal decision. Illegally and secretly, they bombed Cambodia, a neutral country, back to the Stone Age. And I mean Stone Age in its literal sense. Shortly after dawn on April the 17th, the bombing stopped and there was silence. Then out of the forest came the victors, the Khmer Rouge, whose power had grown out of all proportion to their numbers. They entered the capital Phnom Penh, a city most of them had never seen. They marched in disciplined Indian file through the long boulevards and the still traffic. They wore black and were mostly teenagers. And people cheered them, nervously, naively. After all, the bombing, the fighting, was over at last.
Television evangelist has confessed publicly to committing sins against God and his family. Jimmy Swaggart made his confession on television and left the pulpit in tears. It's believed he was photographed with a prostitute in a hotel room.
Jimmy Swaggart's church was packed yesterday as the wealthy American evangelist arrived with his wife and family. The sermon was hardly typical. The preacher had come to make a public confession about a sexual encounter with a prostitute. The evangelist was tearfully contrite.
To my Lord and my Savior, my Redeemer, the one whom I serve, and I love and I worship. I have sinned against you, my Lord.
We are ready, willing, and able to make a deal, but they don't want to. They don't want security at the border. We have people pouring in. They don't want security at the border. They don't want to stop drugs. And they want to take money away from our military, which we cannot do. So those are some of the things. Comments the other day, did you see what various senators in the room said about my comments? They were amazed. Oh, these little like people think you're racist. No, I'm not a racist. I am the least racist person you have ever interviewed. That I can tell you.
When talk turned to Haiti and countries in Africa at that meeting, he apparently said, this is a quote, "Why are we having all these people from shithole countries come here?" You can't dance around it. Those are the words of the President of the United States. It brings back to the fore the suggestion he is not only contemptuous but racist. He apparently suggested he prefer immigrants from places like Norway. The White House has not denied these words. In fact, here's what a Deputy White House press secretary said. Certain Washington politicians choose to fight for foreign countries, but President Trump will always fight for the American people. Reaction has been swift and blunt. A Republican lawmaker, a daughter of Haitian immigrants, called it unkind, divisive, elitist, and flying in the face of our nation's values.
This story hits close to home. It's a Michigan man. He's been arrested after he allegedly made numerous calls to CNN headquarters in Atlanta, threatening to kill this network's employees. His name is Brandon Greisemer, allegedly made 22 calls to CNN on January 9th and 10th. 4 of those calls, which were recorded, contained threats, according to the federal affidavit. And there's nothing random about this. Nothing. This is what happens when the President of the United States, Donald Trump, repeatedly attacks members of the press simply for reporting facts he does not like. The president, just this morning, blasting our very own Jim Acosta and calling CNN fake news. A charge he has leveled at the press, not just CNN, over and over.
The media is rigged. You are fake news.
Yeah, I think the media is the opposition party in many ways.
The fake media is trying to silence us, but we will not let them. A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people.
Sir, do you want people to come in from other parts of the world where there are people of color?
I've heard from a number of very credible sources from within the White House that you watch this show. You deny it all the time, but then you say something disparaging about me. And the only way you would know that is if you saw the show. So, Mr. President, I'm going to speak directly to you. We are not the enemy. We are not trying to silence you. It is the job of the free press to report the facts, to ask questions, tough questions, ones you don't like, even if you don't like the facts or those questions. No matter how many times you attack us as fake news, we will continue to do our jobs. When you make that baseless and incendiary charge, be aware that people are listening to you, some very dangerous people. According to a federal affidavit, the caller who threatened to kill CNN employees made his threat using these words, quote, fake news. I'm coming to gun you all down. Fake news. I wonder where he got those words. And in the second call, quote, I am on my way right now to gun the effing CNN cast down. I am coming to kill you. So I can only speak for myself, but I know my coworkers have also had threats at this network, other networks, other news organizations. There's an open case with the NYPD right now with someone who is threatening to kill me. When you, Donald Trump, tweet the post of a train hitting CNN, you might think it's funny. It's not. It's stupid. It's actually childish. My 10-year-old nephew wouldn't even do something like that. When you tweet a doctored video of you body slamming CNN, people are watching. What grade are you in? People take that message seriously. And if one of us is hurt, or God forbid something else in some way or another, because you either don't understand the power of your words and or you don't care, it won't be a fake injury or sadly a fake death, it'll be real. And how will you answer those questions then? Not only from journalists, but from our loved ones, because you're going to have to do it. Let's hope it doesn't happen. Let's hope you see the error of your ways as well.
Nobody has more respect for women than I do. Nobody. Nobody has more respect.
Please, everybody.
And frankly, those stories have been largely debunked. I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it.
Whoa.
I did try and fuck her. She was married.
That's huge news, Sarah.
No, Nancy. Yeah. No, this was marriages. And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. Then all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. You can do anything.
Pull the ham.
Hello, how are you? Hi.
Here in this final clip, we have a very poignant quote from Carl Jung. Carl Jung says, "The world hangs by a thin thread, and that thread is the psyche of man. Nowadays, we are not threatened by elemental catastrophes. We are the great danger. The psyche is the great danger. What if something goes wrong with the psyche? And so it is demonstrated in our day, what with the power of the psyche and the power that it has, how important it is to know something about it. But we know nothing." And then, from his trusted student and colleague, Maria Louise von Franz, we feel and face a very poignant ending to the video clip. Let's watch.
The world hangs on a thin thread, and that is the psyche of man. Nowadays, we are not threatened by elementary catastrophes. There is no such thing as an H-bomb. That is all man's doing. We are the great danger. The psyche is the great danger. What if something goes wrong with the psyche? See? And so you see, it is demonstrated to us in our days what the power of the psyche is of man, how important it is to know something about it, but we know nothing about it.
Jung had a vision at the end of his life of a catastrophe. It was a world catastrophe.
I don't want to speak much about it. One of his daughters took notes and after his death gave it. And there's a drawing with a line going down, up and down, and underneath is the last 50 years of humanity. And some remarks about the final catastrophe being ahead. But I have only those notes.
Mm-hmm. What is your own feeling about it, the world
situation?
Well,
one's whole feeling revolts against this idea. But since I have those notes in a drawer, I don't allow myself to be too optimistic. I think Well, we have always had wars and enormous catastrophes, and I have no more personal fear much about that. I mean, at my age, if you have anyhow soon to go, so or so or so, egocentrically spoken. But the beauty of all the life, to think that the billions and billions and billions of years of evolution to build up the plants and the animals and the whole beauty of nature, and that man would go out of sheer shadow foolishness and destroy it all. I mean, that all life might go from the planet. And we don't know. On Mars and Venus, there's no life. We don't know if there's any life experiment elsewhere in the galaxies. And we go and destroy this. I think it's so abominable. I try to pray that it may not happen, that a miracle happens.
Do you find that young people that you see now are aware of that it's in their consciousness?
Yes, it's partly in consciousness, partly in their consciousness, and I think in a very dangerous way, namely in a way of giving up and running away into a fantasy world. You know, when you study science fiction, you see there's always the fantasy of escaping to some other planet and begin anew again, which means give up the battle on this earth. Look, consider it hopeless and give up. I think one shouldn't give up. Because if you think of answer to Job, if man would wrestle with God, if man would tell God that he shouldn't do it, if we would reflect more, that's why reflection comes in. Jung never thought that we might do better than just possibly sneak around the corner with not too big a catastrophe. When I saw him last, he had also a vision while I was with him, but there he said, I see enormous stretches devastated, enormous stretches of the earth. But thank God it's not the whole planet. I think that if not more people try to reflect and take back their projections and take the opposites within themselves, there will be a total destruction.
What Maria Louise von Franz and Jung are absolutely saying is that the shadow, the human shadow, may very well completely destroy us and the planet.